The richest man in ancient Egypt just died of starvation. Not because he was poor, because the river didn't flood that year. And here's what nobody tells you about ancient Egypt. Every single level of wealth, from the farmer sleeping in the mud to the pharaoh sleeping under gold, all of it ran on one variable. One, a river deciding to behave. No flood, no harvest, no wealth, at any level. This is the most fragile wealth system ever built by human beings, and it lasted 3,000 years. Here's every level of it. Level 1. You are a farmer. You own almost nothing. Not the land, not the river, not the grain after taxes. What you own is a wooden hoe, a pair of sandals, and the right to exist on soil that belongs to someone you will never meet. Your house is 2 rooms, mud brick. Your family in one, your goat in the other. I'm not going to tell you which room smells worse. Here's your entire financial plan for the year. Wait. Wait for the Nile to flood. Wait for the water to pull back. Wait for the black soil, the kemet, the gift to appear. Then plant, then pray, then harvest, then give most of it away. To the temple, to the state, to the system that says it owns everything, and keep what's left. Some years that's enough. Some years it isn't. You are one dry season away from watching your children eat less. That's the ceiling. Survival. Level 2. Same life, but you have an ox. This sounds ridiculous, but an ox is the difference between surviving and compounding. One ox means you plow more land. More land means more surplus. More surplus means you can hire someone during harvest instead of begging your cousin. You are one animal away from the beginning of actual leverage. Your house now has 3 rooms. You have a fig tree your grandfather planted. Your wife brews beer, which in ancient Egypt is not a hobby. It's a business. You still fear the Nile, but now it takes 2 bad floods to destroy you instead of 1. Small margin, real difference. Level 3. The Artisan. The first strike. You don't work the fields. You work with your hands, but differently. You are a craftsman, stonecutter, carpenter, potter. And you live in a place called Deir el-Medina, a village outside the Valley of the Kings, where the entire population has one job: build the tombs of pharaohs. Strange job title, but the benefits are genuinely good. The state feeds you, rations delivered to your door, grain, fish, oil, salt. You don't harvest it yourself, it just arrives. You're insulated from the Nile's moods by the institutional buffer of the state supply chain. You have a private skill. Your name travels. Send me the man who carved the falcon on the north wall. His lines are clean. That's your personal brand, 1200 BCE. Now here's the part they don't teach in history class. In the 29th year of Ramesses III, one of the most powerful pharaohs who ever lived, the rations stopped arriving. The state was late. The workers waited again. And then they walked off the job. They crossed the wall of the royal necropolis, sat down in front of the mortuary temples, and refused to move. They sent a message: "We are hungry and thirsty. There is no clothing, no ointment, no fish, no vegetables." This was the first recorded labor strike in human history. The workers of Deir el-Medina, people at level 3, shut down the afterlife construction of the most powerful man on earth, and they won. The rations came. This is the level where you realize specialized knowledge is not just income, it's leverage. Level 4. The Scribe. You can read. In a civilization where 1% of the population is literate, this is not a small thing. This is a superpower that looks like sitting in the shade. You don't carry things. You don't build things. You sit with a reed pen and a palette of ink, and you write things down. And somehow, this makes you more valuable than almost everyone who sweats under the Egyptian sun. Your hands are clean. That's the signal. In ancient Egypt, the cleanliness of your hands tells people everything they need to know about where you sit. You eat roasted duck, good bread, beer that isn't watered down. You have access to institutional networks. You know which official is buying land. You know which merchant has surplus copper. In a pre-literate society, knowing things is compound interest. It pays you whether you're working or not. But the ceiling above you is still visible. You serve the powerful. You're not yet one of them, but you are in the room when decisions happen. That's level 4, the room. Level 5, the official inflection point. And this is where everything changes. Not just how much you have, what kind of thing wealth even is. You are a government official, a monarch, a regional administrator. You don't work for resources anymore. Resources work for you. You have people, scribes under you, laborers assigned to you, a household staff that manages the logistics of your life while you manage the logistics of a province. Your house is an estate. Thick mud brick walls, a central courtyard with a pool, trees planted for shade, servants who know your preferences before you express them. You receive land grants from the crown. This is the real threshold. Land you own, not land you work. Land that other people work on your behalf and pay you in surplus. You are now a receiver of value, not a producer. Your tomb is being built while you're alive. You have approved the wall scenes, your estate, your cattle, your family, your best day, repeated forever. The Nile flood that terrifies everyone below you, you feel it, but you have enough reserves that one bad year is a budget problem, not an existential one. And here's the thing nobody talks about at this level. You stop thinking about money every day. Not because you have so much, but because the structure around you handles it. The granaries track it, the scribes record it, the land generates it. You've built a system, not just a balance. That psychological shift, money stops being a daily concern, that's level 5. That's the real inflection. Level 6, the High Priest of Amun, the inversion. High Priest of Amun. This is where religion and finance become the same sentence. The Temple of Amun at Karnak is not a place of worship. It is the largest economic institution in Egypt. At its peak, it owns 12% of the country's arable land, its own granaries, its own trade fleet, its own workshops, its own army of workers, its own treasury that the state cannot touch. Why can't the state touch it? Because it belongs to the gods. As high priest, you run all of it. You are the CFO of a tax-exempt multinational operating under divine protection. The auditors cannot come. The Pharaoh himself has theological reasons to leave you alone. Your personal wealth is indistinguishable from institutional wealth, which is, as any good accountant will tell you, the goal. Now here's the plot twist. By the 11th century BCE, after centuries of accumulating land, grain, gold, and institutional authority, the high priests of Amun stopped serving Pharaoh. They became Pharaoh. Herihor, high priest of Amun under Ramesses XI, he began issuing royal decrees in his own name. He put his own cartouche, the oval symbol of divine kingship, on temple walls. He ruled Upper Egypt as if he were king, while a nominal pharaoh sat in the delta, doing almost nothing. The priests had outcompounded the crown. Level 6 is where you understand the most powerful wealth isn't the wealth everyone can see. It's the wealth protected by an idea. Level 7, the Vizier. Second most powerful person in Egypt. There is one of you. Every legal dispute passes through your court. Every construction project starts with your seal. Every tax assessment, every land grant, every trade mission, your authorization. You are the operating system of the most sophisticated administrative state on Earth. You travel by river barge. When you arrive at a provincial capital, they don't just announce you, they clear the streets. Your sons become officials. Your grandsons become officials. The land you've accumulated will not revert to the crown in a single generation. The legal infrastructure you helped write ensures that. But here's the fragility. At the top, you are completely, structurally dependent on one person. One pharaoh who decides they want different loyalty. One rival who is better at palace politics than you. One accusation, real or fabricated, and your titles are stripped. Your assets redistributed. Your name, in the worst cases, carved off the walls of your own tomb while you're still alive to watch it happen. Damatio memoriae. The Egyptians didn't invent the word, but they practiced the concept with a chisel. This is the level where power and fragility become the same thing. The higher you go, the more catastrophic the fall when it comes. Level 8. Pharaoh. There is no level above this. You don't own Egypt. You are Egypt. Every field, every river, every grain of sand between the first cataract and the Mediterranean. It is an extension of your divine body. You wake up, and the first act of your day is a ritual that maintains the order of the universe. Not metaphorically, literally. The educated people of your time, the priests, the astronomers, the advisors, they genuinely believe that your daily ritual is what makes the sun rise. You eat from the tribute of a civilization. Your body will be preserved for eternity. Your face reconstructed in gold. Your story carved into stone that will stand for 4,000 years. You wear 2 crowns because even the symbolism of your headwear is doing political work. But even here's what brings it all back to the beginning. The Nile flood that every other level fears, they fear it because of you. Your divine harmony with the gods, your ma'at, is what is supposed to cause the inundation. A bad flood isn't a weather event, it's a theological crisis. And the crisis is you. The richest man in Egypt, the most powerful person on earth, and he is staring at the sky every year, waiting for a river to decide his fate. Same as the farmer, same fear, different crown. There's still one level above you, the river. 3,000 years, 8 levels, 1 river. The most sophisticated wealth system in the ancient world had a single point of failure that nobody could engineer around. The farmers knew it, the priests knew it, the pharaoh knew it. They built the pyramids anyway. Make of that what you will. Trust me, bro. I just summed up 3,000 years of civilization in 10 minutes. Oversimplification is the feature, not the bug. If I had to pick, I'd be a scribe. Shade, clean hands, institutional access, moderate existential dread. Honestly, not bad.